And there was something, in my opinion, missing in their eyes. It didn't seem real to me.
Many people out there have been speculating on that Meghan Markle has lied about her age. Is she actually older?
I'm going to quote Tom Bauer by saying, he said, look, we all laughed at Samantha and she was right. And everything she said has come true.
And there's a very big difference. It was deliberate.
What if the biggest royal illusion of the decade didn't come from the palace at all, but from Meghan Markle herself? Because for years, one woman kept quietly pushing a story the world refused to hear. That woman was Samantha Markle. While headlines praised Meghan as the perfect modern duchess, Samantha kept hinting that something about the official timeline just didn't sit right. According to Samantha, Meghan's story simply doesn't add up.
I'll tell you why. What she told the royal family, what she told Harry, wouldn't have jived, wouldn't have been consistent with the truth.
The tabloids loved presenting Meghan as a flawless, self-made Hollywood success story, the kind of fairy tale rise people dream about. But Samantha argued that the numbers behind Meghan's so-called official age were about as believable as a storybook ending.
There's nothing original here.
I hope you're having the best birthday you've ever had. Thank you for everything.
Which is really such a fake.
I remember when she was born, big new addition to the family, and we just have a very young sister here.
In her eyes, the math never worked, and the public was applauding a timeline that might have been carefully polished for the spotlight. Think about it. Every birthday celebration, every glamorous turning 40 photo shoot splashed across magazines.
When she said, I lost my father, we knew that she didn't lose our dad, she iced our father.
When Samantha finally spoke on record, she wasn't ranting. She was pleading for
What if those candles were counting down the wrong number the whole time? Samantha insisted this wasn't just a typical family disagreement. She framed it like a puzzle, a numbers game wrapped in designer outfits and palace-level PR. And here's where things get even stranger. When Samantha first started raising these questions, Meghan's supporters shut it down instantly. They called her jealous. They called her bitter. They said she was chasing attention.
Her childhood was with me.
There's nothing original here.
But time has a funny habit of flipping the narrative. Suddenly, old magazines, archived family photos, and scattered timelines started surfacing online, and people began wondering if Samantha's so-called crazy theory wasn't so crazy after all. If Meghan truly adjusted parts of her timeline, if the Duchess known for reinvention actually reshaped details about her own age.
I got her through high school, I got her through college.
She delivered it like an actress delivered it.
But apparently for me, that doesn't matter.
Then the royal fairy tale starts looking less like history and more like costume design. Because once someone begins pulling on that thread, the entire image starts loosening. Behind every flawless Instagram caption and polished public statement, there's always an earlier draft that the public never sees. And according to Samantha, Meghan's draft might be hiding a very different birthday. Long before the world knew Meghan Markle as a duchess, Samantha described her in a very different way.
In my opinion, she would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad.
How can you get your age so wrong?
She called her a mystery surrounded by missing years. Before Netflix specials, before royal interviews, before global headlines, Samantha was sitting with something much simpler, a stack of family memories that didn't match the timeline presented to the public, birthdays that seemed to shift, school photos dated strangely, stories that didn't quite line up. And every time Samantha tried asking questions, she says the door slammed shut. Critics labeled her bitter. Others called her jealous. But Samantha insisted it wasn't envy driving her. She believed she had proof.
This is a copy of 17 magazine. It was published in March of 1997. In it, it mentions our Megzy from Los Angeles and that she was 21 years old at the time of publication. That would make her birth year at around 1976.
There were childhood moments where Meghan supposedly claimed to be 9 years old. Yet some family photos seemed to show someone clearly older. Milestones appeared to move forward or backward depending on which record people looked at. Samantha said she wasn't attacking Meghan. She was connecting dots the media never wanted to examine. Meanwhile, every time Meghan's brand grew brighter and the royal spotlight got bigger, Samantha's warnings seemed to disappear deeper into the background.
So there is something that is not connecting. There is something that is not right.
But she refused to back down. In her view, this wasn't gossip at all. It was simple math. And according to her, the numbers never matched the official equation. When Samantha finally spoke publicly, she wasn't shouting or ranting. She framed it as a serious question. If someone would reshape details about something as basic as their own timeline, then what else might be different?
But if you look at this, Meghan Markle has been incredibly quiet about the birth, but mostly the pregnancy of these children. Everything has been shady. The one who's been blabbing and saying crazy things is Prince Harry.
That single idea cracked the smooth surface of Meghan's public image. And like any rumor that finds momentum online, it started spreading quietly but steadily. But Samantha wasn't the only person paying attention. Her father, Thomas Markle, had been watching from the sidelines.
And when you're pregnant, there's not a pillow under your skirt. And there's live footage of her walking towards camera with her abdomen swaying left to right in a black and white checkered dress.
And when he eventually began sharing his memories, the entire conversation suddenly shifted because Thomas didn't come forward as a critic or a royal insider. He spoke as a father who had spent years documenting his daughter's life with a camera in hand. He had photos from birthdays, videos from school plays.
A doctor has come forward and has absolutely revealed, and you're going to listen to her. She has absolutely revealed and confirmed that Rachel Meghan Markle was never pregnant, never gave birth to any children.
Snapshots of family milestones. But when Meghan's official biography started appearing across magazines and television specials, Thomas says something felt off. The timeline looked too perfect, too polished, like every year had been carefully smoothed out. Thomas remembered driving his daughter to early auditions when she was already a teenager.
Here, the doctor talks about both the children, and listen to what she says.
Yet some reports seem to suggest those events happened when she was much younger. At first, he questioned his own memory. Maybe the years blended together. But old photos, captions, and family documents began telling a different story. The more, Thomas compared those memories with the official timeline printed across glossy magazines.
So you tell me to tell you something that maybe a dozen people actually know that's going to come out very soon. Okay. Meghan Markle, the reason why you watch her interviews and she just seems off. She's owned by a pharmaceutical company. The two children that she had, they're not hers. She didn't have them with Harry. And how her and Harry met is that she's a prostitute.
The stranger it started to look. If Meghan was born in August 1981, he wondered, why did some family records and events appear to place her several years older? To him, this wasn't royal intrigue or palace drama. It was basic arithmetic that didn't seem to work. He reportedly explained it simply.
And you're wondering, why does her age matter at all? Because her age would also have an impact on her ability to have children. Because if Meghan Markle is 4 years older than what we have been led to believe, it makes it even more difficult to believe that she was able to get pregnant so quickly.
I know what age my daughter was when she got her first car, her first job, and her first heartbreak. And according to him, those milestones didn't line up with the version of events presented publicly. When Thomas cautiously mentioned these differences, critics dismissed him as confused, but he insisted he wasn't guessing dates. He was recalling memories etched into a father's mind, the graduation dress.
Never mind the hysterectomy stories that her family have told. But that would make it more difficult because that would make Meghan Markle near 50.
The birthday dinner, even the year printed on an old family Christmas card. That's when he says a bigger realization hit him. If the woman described in royal press releases didn't match the timeline of the daughter he raised, then the story being sold to the public might have been rewritten. And without meaning to, he believed he still held the original version. Then one unexpected discovery pushed the story even further. An old magazine page resurfaced online. Suddenly, Thomas's memories didn't look like nostalgia anymore. They started looking like possible evidence, and that single clue lit a fire across the internet that kept burning for years. Of course, Meghan's defenders pushed back immediately. They said there was no real proof, only family disputes and faded memories. But by that point, the conversation had already begun spreading far beyond the Markle family. And once questions like that reach the public stage, they rarely disappear quietly. Then the internet uncovered something far harder to dismiss than rumors or family arguments: ink on paper. A March 1997 issue of 17 magazine listed Meghan Markle as 21 years old, right there in a lifestyle feature alongside several young women, not 15, not 16, 21, printed, published, archived for decades. And that one small line instantly changed the conversation, because if Meghan was officially born in 1981, she would have been a high school sophomore in 1997, far too young to be listed as an adult participant in a magazine feature. Yet the page existed, plain as day, sitting quietly in the archives long before royal fame, Netflix specials, or polished PR campaigns could shape the narrative. At first, people rushed to explain it away. Maybe it was a typo. Maybe it was a different Meghan Markle. Maybe someone mixed up the information. But the deeper people looked, the harder those excuses became to believe. The photo matched, the name matched, the California connection matched perfectly. The odds of it being someone else suddenly looked incredibly slim. And just like that, Samantha's claims didn't sound like a bitter complaint anymore. They started sounding like a warning people. Ignored. That magazine page became the first solid artifact pointing to a completely different timeline, one that existed long before royal titles, palace press releases, and global headlines, because online rumors can disappear overnight. Tweets can be deleted. Articles can quietly be edited. But printed magazines are different. Print doesn't vanish. And that 1997 page wasn't just a random article anymore. To many people digging into the story, it looked like a piece of evidence waiting patiently for the internet to finally notice. And when two timelines collide, only one can survive. Suddenly, two different versions of Meghan Markle's life were standing face to face. One version is written in official royal ink, a carefully structured timeline. Born August 4th, 1981, raised in Los Angeles, acting opportunities in her 20s, global fame after marrying into royalty in her 30s. A neat, clean story that flows perfectly from one milestone to the next. But then there's the other version, the one Samantha and Thomas hinted at, the rough pencil sketch built from family memories and older records. In that version, Meghan appears to already be a young adult in the mid-1990s, someone appearing in magazines intended for adults, someone whose life timeline may not have simply shifted slightly, but may have been reshaped entirely. In one version of the story, Meghan is 37 when Archie is born. In the other, she would already be in her early 40s. And that's not a tiny rounding error. That's an entirely different chapter of life. The contrast feels like two competing scripts, one polished for glossy press releases, the other scribbled in family scrapbooks and old documents. The palace stands firmly behind the official record, but those older clues keep whispering a different possibility. So which version tells the real story? The perfectly edited biography everyone recognizes, or the one that never made it past the editorial desk? If the official timeline was carefully designed for image, the alternate version feels far more human, messy, imperfect, and far less royal. And when those two possible ages sit side by side, another question suddenly crashes into the conversation. How do the pregnancies fit into either timeline? Because if the numbers shift even a little, the entire narrative begins to wobble. When Meghan announced her pregnancy, headlines exploded with excitement. A royal baby on the way. Cameras flashed everywhere. Fans celebrated. And the palace described everything as perfectly timed for a 37-year-old mother. But behind the celebration, some observers quietly noticed something interesting about the numbers. If the alternate birth timeline, the one pointing to the mid-1970s, had any truth to it, that would mean Meghan was closer to 42 or 43 when Archie arrived. And medically speaking, pregnancies over 40 often fall into what doctors call higher risk territory. Those pregnancies usually involve additional monitoring, specialized screenings, and closer hospital supervision. Yet the public story unfolded like a perfectly choreographed photo shoot. The bump photos looked polished and magazine-ready. The timeline appeared smooth. The recovery seemed remarkably quick. Medical professionals sometimes point out that older pregnancies often involve longer recovery periods and extra observation after delivery. But Meghan's public story seemed to glide forward effortlessly, almost like a carefully edited highlight reel. Soft lighting, smiling photos, perfectly staged moments. The entire presentation felt almost cinematic. And if Meghan truly was in her early 40s, some observers say the intense privacy around the birth would suddenly make more sense. The private hospital, the limited details about medical staff, the unusually guarded birth records, all of it could fit into a strategy focused heavily on controlling the narrative. Because once the age question enters the conversation, it stops being cosmetic and starts becoming critical. Age affects medical risk, recovery timelines, and the basic facts surrounding pregnancy. And if those numbers shift even slightly, the entire story shifts with them. But the most surprising twist didn't come from tabloids or internet detectives. It came from Prince Harry himself. His memoir was meant to present an intimate human side of their lives. Instead, some readers noticed that his description of Archie's birth raised even more questions. He described the scene like a peaceful movie moment, soft music playing in the background, flickering candles, calm voices in the room, Meghan receiving 2 epidurals and later walking out of the hospital only hours after giving birth. A beautiful story on the surface, but one that left some medical experts scratching their heads because the details sounded far more like a scripted scene than a typical hospital delivery. And suddenly, the timeline debate wasn't just about numbers anymore. It was about whether the story itself had been carefully rewritten from the beginning. It sounded cinematic, almost too cinematic, the kind of scene that feels perfectly designed for a movie montage. But when medical professionals read Prince Harry's description of that night, they didn't react with admiration. They reacted with raised eyebrows. Because the Portland Hospital in London, known for luxury maternity care and privacy for high-profile families, still follows strict medical procedures. Even with private suites and elite care, certain rules don't change. After epidurals, mothers are normally kept under observation for several hours, sometimes even overnight. Walking immediately after receiving multiple epidurals is something many professionals say simply doesn't happen in real life. Yet in Harry's version of events, Meghan was reportedly glowing, standing, and heading home almost immediately after giving birth. According to the story, the couple left before the paperwork had barely finished processing. Doctors and medical observers quietly noticed the gaps in that timeline. The timing of discharge felt rushed. Key recovery details were missing. Even the logistics of leaving a secure hospital in central London while newborn checks were supposedly still underway raised questions. Everything about the timeline felt compressed, almost squeezed into a highlight reel. It created a strange contradiction. Either Meghan experienced a delivery that completely defied standard medical practice, or the story had been simplified and polished for public presentation. And if the second possibility is true, people naturally begin asking a simple question. Was that version about privacy or performance? Because hospital procedures are not flexible storytelling tools. They follow strict medical guidelines. Fairy tales can bend reality, but hospital protocols usually cannot. And that's where Harry's dreamy emotional account began colliding with medical reality. When people started reconstructing the timeline of that night step by step, the polished story began to crack. According to Harry's own description, Meghan delivered Archie, received 2 epidurals, recovered, and then left the Portland hospital in roughly 2 hours. 2 hours. For medical experts, that number alone immediately triggered skepticism. After epidural anesthesia, patients are typically monitored for at least 6 hours to ensure circulation stabilizes and mobility returns safely. Standing and walking almost immediately after multiple epidurals is something doctors often describe as extremely unlikely. Yet Harry's recollection painted a completely different picture. Meghan standing, smiling, and calmly leaving the hospital as if the entire event had been a perfectly wrapped photo shoot. Then there's the drive itself. The distance from the Portland hospital to Frogmore Cottage is roughly an hour, depending on traffic and security. Arrangements. When people factor in newborn examinations, medical paperwork, baby transfer procedures, and royal security coordination, the timeline suddenly starts collapsing under its own weight. It wasn't just tight, it felt mathematically impossible. Even supporters of the couple quietly began asking questions. Why rush such an important moment? Why compress a complex medical event into what looked like a short cinematic sequence? Some observers believe the answer could simply be privacy. Others suspect it may have been about narrative control. Either way, the level of precision in the story feels almost choreographed, like each moment had been carefully staged for public consumption. If Meghan truly left the hospital within hours of labor, it would mean bypassing medical norms that even the most discreet royal births have traditionally followed. And if the account had been polished for public image, then an even bigger question starts echoing through the entire story. If the timeline of a royal birth could be edited, what else in this narrative might have been adjusted along the way? Because a 2-hour miracle makes for a beautiful headline. But in the real world, childbirth rarely follows a script. Reinvention is nothing new in celebrity culture. Actors rebrand themselves all the time, but Meghan Markle's transformation from a supporting television actress into a globally recognized duchess was something far bigger than a simple rebrand. It looked like a carefully designed transformation. Every interview, every public quote, every polished photo, each one helped paint a new version of Meghan, a version seemingly untouched by the messy details of the past. Hollywood calls this image control. Royal institutions call it optics. Meghan appeared to understand both worlds extremely well. By the time she stepped into the royal spotlight, the woman entering Buckingham Palace seemed very different from the person some members of her family remembered. Sabian's narrative had sharper edges trimmed away. Timelines appeared smoother. Inconvenient details seemed to fade into the background. In the world Meghan stepped into, perception often becomes reality. And once a story spreads across global headlines, correcting it becomes almost impossible. Fairy tales don't usually come with fact-checking departments. People simply choose whether they want to believe the story. That's exactly why Samantha and Thomas Markle's memories created such tension in the public conversation. Those memories weren't designed for public relations. They were raw family recollections, messy, imperfect, and far harder to polish. And maybe that's why this debate was never truly about age alone. Maybe it was about control of the narrative, about shaping the story before anyone else could challenge it. Because in Meghan's world, critics say truth isn't always something you simply live. Sometimes it becomes something you edit. And once an edited story spreads far enough, the world slowly forgets that there may have been a first draft. When all the pieces are lined up, Samantha's claims, Thomas's memories, the 17 magazine article, and the strange hospital timeline, one possibility begins to stand out. Meghan Markle's public image may not have simply evolved over time. It may have been carefully engineered, a life edited frame by frame until every chapter flowed perfectly. Even if some of the numbers along the way began to bend, maybe it started as harmless branding. Maybe it slowly became a habit. But when details about age, timelines, and even major life events begin looking unusually polished, the line between authenticity and performance starts fading fast. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air. If this story has already revealed so many unexpected clues, what else might still be hidden behind that polished royal curtain? Before you leave, you need to see what happened next, because in our last, deep dive. A certain outspoken British host stunned live television when he suddenly pulled up never-before-seen Soho House photos and dropped a truth bomb that caught the entire audience off guard. That moment didn't just spark headlines. It completely changed how people looked at Meghan's rise. And it connects directly to everything you just heard. So don't scroll away yet. Click the next video and keep watching, because that investigation doesn't just uncover more secrets. It shows why some people believe this entire story may have been carefully shaped from the very beginning. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is Star Spotlight, where the lights shine bright, but the truth shines even brighter. And trust me, the next revelation is already on the way. So I'll see you in the next one.